Okay, now we're going to move on to evaluating piecewise functions. Okay, what you have to do, again, you've got to remember, here x is equal to -2. This means x is equal to 0. I don't know what's going on with my arrows there. This here, x is equal to 1. Okay, so when I'm looking for f of -2, what you have to do is you first have to find where it fits in what we call the domain over here, because remember, domain's x. Because -2 does not fit in here, there's nothing, you don't know what to look for, because -2 is not part of the domain, so we're just going to put undefined. So when we find f of 0, again, our x is 0. Where does that fall? Does it fall here? Is 0 between -1 and 1, or is it between 1 and 2? It falls right here, so you're going to say 3 times whatever our x is, which is 0, and 3 times 0 is 0. And f of 1, this is saying that our x is equal to 1. Well, this has to be less than 1. This one is x is greater than or equal to 1. So we're going to use this function right here, plugging in 1 for our x, so it's 1 plus 1 gives us 2. Same thing down here. They just changed it from an f to a g. Okay, so find g of x for x equals -3. Again, you have to find where that fits in our domain. So if we're going to find g of 3, -3, sorry, -3, we're going to find where it falls. It falls right here, because x is less than or equal to -3. So we're going to use this function right here. And if I were you, I would use the store button. If you know how to plug this in without using the store button, that's fine. But you just got to be really careful about your signs. So that's why I tell you to use that store button on your calculator. So we are going to put -3. Use your store button, which is right here. And we're going to store it under our x. And now all you have to do is plug in this formula right here. X to the third power minus 4x squared, and hit enter. Whoa, and it's not that because I had left it up here in the exponent. Let's try that again. X raised to the third, use my right arrow key, minus 4x squared. That looks better, and it gives us -63. Now, if you're not going to use the store button, make sure whatever you're plugging in goes in parentheses. -3 raised to the third power minus 4 times -3 squared. Oh gosh, I did it again, sorry. Let's try this again. Raised to the third power, use your right arrow key, Kim, minus 4 times -3 squared. And we get -63. Okay, next one, g of 1. 1 falls in this area right here. It's between -3 and 4, so I'm going to use this. 3 times 1 squared. This gives me 1. 1 times 3 is 3. And for g of 4. 4 falls here. It's x is greater than or equal to 4, seeing it's 4. So we're going to use this one. So we're going to say 4 cubed minus 54. Apparently I can do this better without using my calculator, because this gives me 64 minus 54, and that gives us 10. Okay. 4a, we're now moving into our graphing of linear functions. Find the slope-intercept form for the line satisfying conditions. Okay, so slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, when I taught this, you can do it either way. You can just use this alone, or you can use point slope form. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. You plug things in there and then get it in this form. I'm going to show this one first, then I'll show this one. Okay. To use point slope form, first you got to find the slope. Well, connect your x's, connect your y's. That one goes first. It's 6 minus its partner of -5. -4 minus its partner of -2. All right, this top gives us 11. The bottom gives us -6. So our slope we found to be -11.6. Now we're going to take our point slope form, and these two values, you just use one of the points. It really doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to use this one because I like it as 0.1. That's all. Okay, so I'm going to have y minus its y value of the first point, which is going to be -5, equals the slope we just found, -11.6, times x minus the x value of our first point, which is 2. Step 3 is solve for y. A double negative becomes a positive. So here we have x plus 5. Distribute. We get -11.6x plus 22/6. Now we just got to get this 5 over to that side by subtracting it. And we get y equals -11.6x. That's -30/6, which that's going to give us -8.6. Reducing it gives us -4/3. Again, you can do this on your calculator. It'll give you this answer. Okay, again, I knew this was the same thing as -30/6. And that gives us -8.6, which reduced to that. If you want to use this, because some of you learned it this way, this x and y, okay, we know you still had to find the slope, okay, which we did. Then you got to pick one of these points and plug it in for x and y and solve for b. Again, I'm just going to pick this one. The y value, if I'm going to use y equals mx plus b, the y value is -5. My slope is -11.6. My x is 2 plus b. Now you just solve this for b. -5 equals, this is going to give us a -11/3 plus b. Take this to the other side by adding it. Okay. And we get b equals -15, be -4/3. Okay, so now you just have to remember what you're doing. You're writing the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. You just found the intercept. We already knew the slope to begin with because we found it, -11.6 x minus 4/3. Notice it's the exact same thing as this. Pick one way only. From here on out, though, we are told to teach it this way here at Pellissippi, so I'm going to teach it this way. Okay, now we're going to write the equation of a line that has that's perpendicular to this line and passes through this slope. This point. Now, things you have to know, because on your exam, your final, it might say parallel, and who knows, the next problem may be parallel. Parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular are, they say negative reciprocal. Just means if it's negative, it'll be positive. If the slope was positive, it'll be negative. I like to call it opposite reciprocal. Okay, so in this case, this slope of this line is m equals -2. Okay, that's our slope. But we're writing if I was writing an equation of a line that was parallel to this, I would use -2 as my slope. But seeing it's perpendicular, the slope I'm going to use is going to be the opposite reciprocal, meaning this is -2 over 1. The opposite would be a positive, and the reciprocal would be 1 over 2. Now, I'm just going to use point slope form. Y minus my y, which is 5, equals my slope times x minus my x, which is a -2. Step 3 is solve for y. Y minus 5, double negative becomes positive. 1/2 times x is 1/2 x. 1/2 times 2 gives me 1. Add 5. And y equals 1/2 x plus 6. And if you wanted to check it, all you have to do is plug that under y equals and then see if that point's on there. And you can plug that in and see if they're perpendicular. The other thing is perpendicular lines, if you take their slopes, -2 over 1, and multiply it by the perpendicular, it gives you -1. This is -2 over 2, which gives us -1. So I know it's perpendicular. And if this point is on this line, it's right. I can just plug this in. 1/2 times -2 gives me -1. -1 plus 6 gives me 5. You can do that on your calculator. I just happen to do it in my head. Okay. Number 5. Continuing with the same thing. The x and the y intercepts. Okay. X-intercepts, you get that by plugging in 0 for y. To find your y-intercepts, you plug in 0 for x. Now, you could have no x-intercepts, you could have one x-intercept, you could have two, when you're doing functions. In this particular case, because this is linear, it doesn't have an x squared, x cubed, it's just a plain x, you are only going to have one. But if you had an x squared and you were trying to find the x-intercepts, you could have none, you could have one, you could have two. Okay, so now what you're going to do to find the x-intercept, you plug in 0 for y. So you're going to say 3x plus 2 times 0 equals 7. That gives us 0. We get 3x equals 7. Divide by 3. And x is equal to 7/3. So the x-intercept as a point is 7/3, 0. Now, to find the y-intercept. Now, everything only has one y, and that's, if it had more than that, it wouldn't be a function. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in 0 for my x. So I'm going to say 3 times 0 plus 2y equals 7. That gives us 0. 2y equals 7. Divide by 2. And y equals 7/2. So this is the point 0, 7/2. My x was 0. My y was 7/2. To find the slope of this line, what you have to do is get y by itself, put it in slope-intercept form. I'm going to take my 3x to the other side. I'm going to get it there by subtracting it. And I get negative 3x plus 7, because that's a positive 7. Now I'm going to divide everything I see by 2. Everything. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So you got to divide everything by 2. So I get y equals negative 3 halves x plus 7 halves. Your slope is the number that's in front of the x, which is negative 3 halves. Notice I did not put the x with it. The x and the y stand for every point on this line. Okay, the slope of the line is negative 3 over 2, not with an x, just without it. Okay, I don't know why they did this backwards. I would have done this because we just found that. That is this right here. Then I would have asked, what's the slope? Okay. Oh, I know why they were doing it that way. I'm so used to doing it this way. We could have, because to me that's the easiest. The other way we could have found the slope up here is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 from these 2 points. So y2 was 7 halves minus 0 over 0 minus 7 thirds. So on the top I had 7 over 2. On the bottom I had a negative 7 over 3. And I don't have enough room. I'm just going to keep coming down here. Okay. This is the same thing as saying 7 over 2 divided by negative 7 over 3. Well, you never really divide fractions. You say 7 halves times, and you flip the second one, 3 over 7. You can multiply straight across and then reduce, but I just reduce this way and then multiply the same straight across and get negative 3 halves. So for this one here, I got negative 3 halves by doing it this way or this way. Okay. A company's revenue and cost based on X number of units can be modeled by the following functions. This is revenue, this is cost. So how many units does the company have to sell to break even? Round to the nearest whole number. Okay, so break even point is when these two things are the same. So what you're going to do is you're going to set them equal to each other. 500x minus 3x squared equals 10,000 plus 12x. Now, I don't care really how you work this problem, but first things first, we have an x squared. You've got to get everything to one side. You've got to get it set equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is I want my x squared to be positive, so I'm going to take that over there. So my 3x squared becomes positive. Well, I'm also going to take this over here by subtracting the 500x. That way over here I end up with 0 by doing that. 12x minus 500x gives us negative 488x plus 10,000. Okay. At this point, it's solving a quadratic. You have 4 ways to solve a quadratic. The first way is factoring, but that looks really hard to factor. Okay, it's not going to factor anyway. So, because I think it gives us a decimal. The second way is square root property. You can't use that because we have a b. The third way is completing the square. You could do that, but most of you are not. The fourth way, which most of you will use, and even me included on this one because of numbers, and we have a calculator that's going to do the trick. Let's plug it into quadratic formula. The problem with this is you have to know what the quadratic formula is. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. The whole thing, all over 2a. Notice where my line is. Okay, it's all over. So this means the negative b, which is 488, because it was negative, plugging it in, it's going to become a positive, plus or minus the square root of 488 squared, or b squared, minus 4 times our a, which is 3, times our c, which is 10,000. All over 2 times my a, which is 3. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out what this is. Okay? So I'm going to do 488 plus or minus whatever that number gives me. 488, whoops, too many. 488 squared minus 4 times 3 times 10,000. Gives me that big number. 118,144. All over 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so I am going to put 488 plus square root of that big number. And I'm going to hit enter. I'm not going to do this all at once. If I'm going to do it all at once, this whole thing needs to be in parentheses, because that way I'm telling the calculator to simplify this top. But I'm going to hit enter, and now I'm going to divide it by 6. And it says round to the nearest whole unit, so that's going to become 139. Well, you still have to check the other one. I'm just going to bring it back up by hitting second enter, change that to a minus sign. I'm going to hit enter again, and then I'm going to divide it by 6, and I get 24. So you must sell 24 units or 139 units to break even. How many units, round to the nearest whole number, need to be sold to maximize profit, and what is that profit? Okay. Maximize profit. Now, first of all, anytime you see that word, you think vertex. Okay? Anytime maximum or maximize, think vertex. Now, the problem here is they did not give us the profit function. They gave us revenue and cost. Well, in order to find your profit, you take your revenue, meaning the money that's coming in, and you subtract the cost. Okay? That gives you what's called profit. That's when you are making, that's how much money you're making. Okay, so I'm going to call this P of X. We're going to take our revenue function, which is this one here, 500 x minus 3x squared, and I'm going to subtract my whole cost. My cost is 10,000 plus 12x. I'm subtracting that whole thing. So by subtracting that whole thing, both of these signs change. So I have 500x minus 3x squared minus 10,000 minus 12x. Okay, now let's write our formula for our profit. I'm going to put negative 3x squared first. 500 and negative 12 gives us a positive 488x minus 10,000. Okay, now we've got our formula. Now we've got to find our vertex of this formula. Well, x equals negative b over 2a. So it's negative 488 over 2 times my negative 3. Don't use your calculator until you have to. What that means is negative 488 divided by negative 6. Now is when you can use your calculator. Okay? I don't want you to use it starting here. I see too many mistakes. Trying to get the glare from my light at my desk. It's kind of hard to see the calculator. Divided by negative 6. And we get 81 units. Or 81, okay? Now, the reason I said units is because x were my number of units, okay? And it says how many units, rounded to the nearest whole number, need to be sold to maximize the profit. So we got our 81 units. Sorry, my document camera's in the way. Now, that's the first question. What is that profit? Meaning, how much money are we going to make from selling 81 units? Well, you take this and you plug it in. So, you're going to take 81 store x, or however it is that you want to do it, and you're going to plug it into this formula. Negative 3x squared plus 488x minus 10,000. And it's 9,845. So our profit for selling 81 units would be $9,845. Okay. So that takes care of that recording right there.